around this time of year. So if they're still hosting the game, then we'll be starting to recruit new players.
I thought the first person Gyun would try to find would be the recruiter, since he works in the outside world. It made sense that Gyun's first mission would be tracking him down, and that became the main plot of episode 1. When I was writing the episode, I started with the question, what would happen if these two met again? What would that look like?
Why don't we play a little game? The recruiter's so mysterious in season 1, so we're taking a big risk by bringing him back. Both the director and I were worried that if we revealed too much about him to the audience, he might lose the mystique he had. Or they'll go, oh, he's a borderline psychopath. But they should wonder, what kind of life has this guy lived? Why does he act like this? What's behind that look in his eye?
It's amazing how Gong Yu brought that character to life. His performance, his choices, they're all so perfect. He did such a great job creating this strange, bizarre persona in his scenes.
The two of you like games, right? We're gonna play a little game. We'll play rock, paper, scissors -1.
But under that bizarre exterior, there's still this terrifying, unhinged quality and a dark, sort of sick humor that he manages to capture so well. I think every single scene Gong Yu is in is just completely filled with his unique energy.
Survival odds are 5 and 6. To be honest, throughout my career, I've always wanted to play a villain, but it had to be the right role. I think director Hwang Dong-hyuk sensed that desire immediately. So this is really the first time I've been able to be a full-on villain. I think more than any other character I've played through the years, the recruiter from Squid Game is the one I've grown the most attached to.
He's one of the pivotal characters in season 2.
After he survives being shot, he goes back to his day job as a cop.
So the fun is actually watching the culprit commit the crimes and seeing how they hide their tracks.
With that, let the game begin.
I would like to extend a heartfelt welcome to you all.
Trying so hard to hold still. It was really fun to shoot, but really scary at the same time.
If you wish to participate, please state your name and date of birth.
In season 1, we followed a few of the workers who wear the circle masks. For seasons 2 and 3, I wanted to explore the world of the soldiers wearing the triangle masks. In red light, green light, all those bullets come from somewhere. But who's doing the shooting? Because you'd have to be an extremely talented sniper to shoot like that. So I thought it'd be interesting to tell the story of one of those sharpshooters in season 2. Depending on what the senior recruiters decide, some people get pulled in as players, and others get hired as personnel. I thought it'd be a fun twist to follow someone who at first you think is just another player, but then she turns out to be a soldier.
When I was watching season 1, I saw that there were a ton of players, 456 actually. But then over here, you have this unknown army of masked soldiers who might even outnumber the players. As a viewer, I started to wonder, those soldiers are all people too, aren't they? What kind of circumstances in their lives drove them to do this, and how do they feel about it? So in season 2, I was really happy to get the opportunity to take on a role that actually answered some of those questions and play a character that let me explore the backstories and the emotions of the masked soldiers. When she first started working at the games, Noel's whole rationale for what she was doing was sort of humane. She wanted to help people with no hope left, and in her mind, she was giving them peace by putting them out of their misery as painlessly as possible. In a way, I think she's doing this because she sees her own pain mirrored in the people she's being told to kill. She wants to end their suffering because she understands it. She knows that if they're here, they must be hurting as much as she is.
You can save me.
Shoot! No! Don't do it!
Time's up. You did not cross the finish line.
I found that contrast so interesting. There's such a dichotomy between these whimsical spaces and...
Oh, everybody mingle! This is gonna be fun, right, guys?
The game that stood out the most to me was...
There's one shot from this season that really stuck with me. I think it's so striking.
As I was coming up with story ideas, it occurred to me that if the VIPs want to see human beings at their very worst, they'd want to include characters who had existing connections. Players who knew each other in some way, so they could observe them throughout the games and see how they change. I wanted to show that they might not get what they expect. That in the end, all their predictions, all the assumptions they made about these people might end up being wrong.
Consent form clause 3. If the majority of players agree to stop playing, the games will be terminated.
I love how it's set up this season with the players being able to vote between each of the games. Just adding that one little twist was genius. I thought, how did our director come up with such a brilliant idea?
In Season 1, we established the voting system, but we utilize it a lot more actively in Season 2. The organizers who run the game have their own motives for changing how the voting process is carried out. In Season 2, they leverage it in a much more cunning and powerful way.
Even though at first glance it seems like a very democratic process, it's also kind of terrifying because you're casting your vote in public. Everyone can see whether you pressed X or O. So if you really stop and think about the way they've decided to do the vote, it's actually very cruel.
Like we agreed. We do one more and then get out, right?
By giving them an option that didn't exist in Season 1, we're showing how the players are being manipulated into dividing into two sides. And that division leads to intense confrontations.
I get why you did it. The cash in there still isn't quite enough for me, so I did consider trying to play one more just like you did.
Right now, well, it's not only happening here in Korea. Societies across the whole world are becoming increasingly divided. We're seeing an escalation of this kind of conflict everywhere. Hatred based on religion, ideology, birthplace, gender, or race. I wrote this season the way I did because I wanted to reflect our reality in a more symbolic way. That's why I showed how the X's and the O's start to divide amongst themselves. As it goes on, they start to hate each other. They start to clash, and that evolves into a full-on conflict.
Hyun comes back to try and start a revolt that will destroy the games for good. And so the way I thought about it was, maybe Frontman disguises himself as Yongyil and takes part in the games just to stop Hyun. I don't know, but I'll do whichever one you think, Hyun.
How did you know my name?
He starts out thinking he'll push Gyun all the way to his breaking point. By the end of this, you'll be on your knees. You're gonna make the same exact choice I did. But I think there's more. I think that somewhere deep down, he still has feelings. This last little shred of compassion that is lingering inside. He's very complicated. Sometimes he feels regret for the things he's done over the years. In my opinion, that's really the story at the core of Season 2, and partially into Season 3. The face-off between In-ho and Gyun. It's not a physical battle, it's a conflict of beliefs. In-ho wants to say, that's just the way humans are, it's in their nature. But Gyun, he doesn't agree. He wants to prove him wrong. He wants to prove that human beings can choose to be better, to pick the less selfish option. I wanted In-ho to be this opposing force. He enters himself into the game so he can test Gyun at each stage of the journey. And in Season 1, Ilnam talked about his experience, how playing through the games made him feel. I think that's another reason In-ho was compelled to step into this world again, for the first time in a long while. So considering all of that, I thought it would be fun if In-ho actually joined the games. I thought he'd make the biggest impression if the audience sees him come into the story as player one, just like Ilnam, but then he ends up voting in a completely different way. That's why I decided to have In-ho play.
My wife back home is very sick. I want to use it to save my wife and our child, and I don't care how I get it. Well, we know that In-ho used to be a player competing in these games, just like everyone else. So it's not too crazy to think that at one point, years ago, he was a lot like the characters you see playing for the first time. I'm sure he was different then. But I think as he played through the games, aspects of his personality started to change. And as a result, his emotions are very layered. Of course, he has his own objective, but he's still got a sliver of humanity left in him. He doesn't always show it outwardly, but I think each moment brings back strong emotions and experiences from his past.
Okay, here's the deal. We're gonna head up that staircase, up to where these masked men run this whole place. They're gonna pay for everything they put us through.
Well, Gyun, he's not a soldier. And when you first get to know him, he doesn't really seem like the type of character who would ever think it's okay to sacrifice a few people if in the end it means you're serving the greater good. But then, in Season 2, I think this inner turmoil starts building up as the games progress. He can't seem to find a way to get the other players to all work together, and I think that struggle changes him. His line of thought then becomes, I need to eliminate the people who have these inhumane thoughts and who continue to do these inhumane things. And at this point, it doesn't matter what I have to do to accomplish that. I just have to make sure that whatever happens, there are no more victims. I think for Gyun, that reasoning starts to take over everything. It's what creates this internal drive and ultimately gives him no choice but to run blindly towards that goal.
Jungbae, you ready?
In the last episode, Gyun takes me with him during the shootout. He kind of casually goes, "Jungbae, you ready?" And we're off. I think at that point, Jungbae foresees his own death to some extent. So why? Why did he follow his friend? Why did he tag along when he knew he was gonna die? When he kind of saw it coming?
Why'd you take me along instead of Young-il?
I don't know. Guess you're my best friend.
You only say that when you're in a jam, bro.
Jungbae is the only person who knows what Gyun was like before all of this.
Fuck, dude, I'm finally talking to some Gyun again. I thought he was gone. You seem so different.
With Jungbae, I wanted to find small moments where Gyun would slip back into his old persona and show the audience a side of himself that we rarely get to see in seasons 2 and 3. And that builds to the event that ultimately destroys Gyun. He's been there with Gyun every step of the way. But in the end, Jungbae, in part due to Gyun's own miscalculations and arrogance, dies in front of Gyun's eyes.
Player 456, did you have fun playing the hero?
I thought the best way to make Gyun hit rock bottom was by watching his oldest friend die. That's why when I was writing Season 2, I knew I had to include Jungbae in the games.
Of course, it would have been nice if we had succeeded. But in those final moments, even after I get shot and fall to the ground, my eyes are locked on Gyun till my last breath. And as I fade away, my thoughts aren't, oh man, I'm dead, all because of you. Instead, it's more like, I'm sorry I didn't make it, that I didn't do my part.
Player 390 eliminated.
By creating this fictional microcosm with these players in these game halls, I wanted to ask, isn't this what our society looks like? Isn't this how we're all living our lives today? Sort of presenting our story to viewers as if it were someone else's. In doing so, my hope was really to engage the audience at home, to give them an opportunity to reflect on society. Maybe they'd start to wonder, is this who I am right now? How am I living my life?
Listen. Say I died right in front of you. And you got out with all that money. Could you let that go?